WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar. Good evening and thank you for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide on wadr.org. This is Newslink. Here are the top stories. Amnesty International reveals a worrying trend of human rights violations, arbitrary arrest, intimidation of CSOs and journalists in Niger.
We do denounce the cases of arbitrary detentions, but also the increasingly restrictive legal framework, but also attacks against the press and journalists that has been occurring in Niger since July 2023.
Burkina Faso declares intention to withdraw from the Organization of La Francophonie (OIF). Côte d'Ivoire's electoral umpire urges solidarity as it displays a provincial electoral list nationwide.
La liste électorale provisoire aujourd'hui disponible compte au total 8 millions.
The provisional electoral list currently available comprises a total of 8,761,348 voters.
Details of these stories are more coming up shortly.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Thanks for joining our broadcast. Newslink begins with the Human Rights Situation Report on Niger Republic published by Amnesty International. In the report, Monsieur Suvede, Amnesty's interim regional director for West and Central Africa, noted that human rights have been trampled underfoot in law and in practice since the coup in July 2023. The organization reports arbitrary detentions, enforced disappearances, and restrictions on press freedom. Those detained include former President Mohamed Bazoum, his wife, 7 former ministers, journalists, and human rights defenders. In the last 20 months, political parties have been suspended, and the press house, which brings together 32 media organizations, was dissolved in January 2024. Ousmane Diallo, a senior researcher for Sahel at Amnesty International West and Central Africa Bureau, speaks to WADR.
So thank you very much. This report is the fruit of an 18-month work since the coup d'etat of 26 July 2023 that initially was monitoring the developments about the coup d'etat, but then started to document the gross human rights violations that were occurring in Niger. So we do denounce the cases of arbitrary detentions, but also the increasingly restrictive legal framework, but also attacks against the press and journalists that has been occurring in Niger since July 2023. I think all people are informed about the continued detention of President Mohamed Bazoum and his spouse Hadiza Mabrouk since July 2023, and the fact that the detention has been denounced as arbitrary, not only by the ECOWAS Code of Justice, but also by the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention. I think a similar situation has occurred with several former ministers of Bazoum who have been prosecuted before the military courts since August 2023, and despite legal orders calling for their release pending their trials in July 2024, they are still kept in detention. But beyond that, we have noted also a climate of intimidation against press actors, but also intimidations against local journalists in Niger who have been exhorted, but also who have been victims of arbitrary detention, but also of prosecution for their coverage of the conflict.
Ousmane Diallo, a senior researcher for the Sahel at Amnesty International's West and Central Africa Bureau. Still in the Sahel, a group of educators from the Menaka region of Mali met with the Prime Minister, Major General Abdoulaye Maiga. The goal of this meeting is to make it easier for educational services to return to an area that has experienced insecurity. Concerned about the teachers' safety, Fussein Yukoni, spokesman for the Region Teachers Collective, called for steps to guarantee their safe journey from Bamako to Menaka, medical evacuations if required, and sufficient housing and food supplies. Francis Boniface has won this report.
Several government officials attended the meeting, including the Deputy Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces and the Ministers of Labour, Civil Service, Social Dialogue and National Education. During discussions, Lieutenant General Sadio Kamara, Minister of Defense and Veteran Affairs, assured that the security situation in Menaka is now favorable for teachers to return. For Fuseni Kone, spokesperson for the Menaka Region Teachers Collective, as long as their safety is ensured, he confirmed that the teachers are willing to resume their positions. This meeting takes place as the governor of the Menaka region has ordered those 151 teachers' salaries be suspended for extended absences, with effect from April 1, 2025. This action comes after multiple warnings that have gone unheeded in an area where 45,000 students and 900 teachers are impacted by 53% of schools closures. Teachers' unions in the country have condemned this decision, highlighting the ongoing insecurity that renders a return to classrooms dangerous. The educational crisis in Menaka is situated within a larger framework in Mali, where 1,722 of the 9,036 schools are shut down, leaving 516,600 children without access to education and impacting over 10,000 teachers.
Francis Boniface reporting there. With 8 months before the presidential election in Côte d'Ivoire, the Independent Electoral Commission has published the provisional electoral list across the entire country. To this end, the electoral umpire organized an informational meeting on March 17 for political parties and civil society organizations regarding the electoral dispute process, which will begin on March 22 and conclude on April 30, 2025. This meeting also allowed CENI to distribute the provisional electoral list on USB drives to political parties and CSOs. The president of the CEI, Coulibaly Kubert, disclosed that after processing the data from the recent 2024 electoral process, the provisional list includes a total of nearly 9 million voters.
La liste électorale provisoire aujourd'hui disponible compte au total 8 millions.
The provisional electoral list currently available comprises a total of 8,761,348 voters. The publication or posting that we are undertaking initiates this period of public scrutiny, which allows for the challenging of registrations, requests for corrections, material errors, irregularities, or the inclusion of voters who may have been wrongly removed or omitted from the list.
La liste alors qui devrait y figurer. Nous ne sommes pas inféodés à un parti.
We are not aligned with any political party. We are not adversaries of political parties. We are not for anyone, nor are we against anyone. We operate solely in the interest of upholding the law. Place your trust in the Independent Electoral Commission.
Confiance à la Commission électorale indépendante.
Kubert Coulibaly is president of the Ivorian Electoral Commission.
While the Burkinabe government has yet to release an official statement, Oria van der Weg noted that the Sahel...
Let's now take you to Burkina Faso, where the country has declared intentions to withdraw from the International Organization of La Francophonie, OIF. This information was conveyed by the OIF's communications director and spokesperson following Nigeria's formal announcement of its withdrawal. Sankle Janko reports.
Release an official statement. Oria van der Weg noted that the Sahel country is implementing measures akin to those in Niger. She conveyed this during an interview with TV5 Monde, emphasizing that the OIF recognizes Burkina Faso's intentions. The departures of both Burkina Faso and Niger are part of a larger movement away from institutions perceived to be aligned with France. At present, Mali, another member of the Alliance of Sahel States, has not officially expressed a desire to withdraw from the OIF. However, given the recent developments triggered by Niger and Burkina Faso, it is likely that Bamako might consider a similar path. The OIF has expressed disappointment over these ongoing withdrawals, but it maintains respect for the sovereign decisions made by these nations. Regarding Niger, Oria van der Weg pointed out that the country was suspended following the July 2023 coup, but discussions for potential reinstatement are ongoing. OIF's communications director and spokesperson reiterated that the organization remains dedicated to promoting dialogue with its member states, even amidst existing diplomatic challenges.
Sankle Janko reporting.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
As a reminder, we stream live on wadr.org. It's no news that non-governmental organizations are reeling from the effect of President Donald Trump's USAID fund freeze. This has prompted organizations in the civic space, particularly in the sub-region, to rethink resilience strategies. Among these stakeholders is Tostan, which organized a workshop in the Senegalese capital Dakar for several NGOs affected by this fund freeze on exploring resilience strategies and transforming challenges into opportunities. Emoradet was at the workshop and filed this report.
The forum provided an opportunity for stakeholders to assess the real impact of the suspension and to explore together innovative approaches to the many funding challenges faced by organizations in the development sector in recent years, including that of COVID, international conflicts, and now the suspension of the U.S. government aid. Speaking on the importance of this workshop, Karina Njai, the Chief Partnership Officer of Tostan, said the essence is to find a way of addressing these funding gaps locally.
We're talking about reinventing, we're talking about co-creating, and at the end of the day, the assessment of what comes first, the envelope, as in the grant or the intention. How have we co-created sustainable development where something that happens from an external funder can freeze an entire industry's work? It's a matter of habit. Now, in this moment, with the wave that we're seeing come of external funding dwindling, we have to think about ways in which we build from what is good, what is strong, what is resilient within our network and also our partnerships.
During the gathering, participants discussed solutions to address these challenges and strengthen collaboration between organizations. Yusuf Adjob with GDI Advisors is one of the participants.
Jobs are being lost. Programs that were supposed to have impact within the community will also not be operationalized. So I think the impact in the short term is quite bad. But I believe that in the longer term, it can turn into positive impact. Because I do not think that a model where foreign aid does not stop is a sustainable one for the countries and the ambitions of our continent. I think that sooner or later we had to pull out that ledge.
Some 20 NGOs whose programs have been affected by the suspension took part in the workshop.
Emoradet filed that report. Elsewhere, the Ghanaian government has announced plans to strengthen regulations on transit of goods following the latest opioid seizure at the Tema port. On Monday, authorities intercepted a shipment of opioids valued at 20 million cedis or $1.3 million. The consignment, which contained potent painkillers and other controlled substances, was reportedly en route to Niger, while similar shipments have been made to Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire. The operation was led by the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority in collaboration with other security agencies. Addressing journalists after the interception, Health Minister Kwabena Minta Kando emphasized the government's commitment to tightening oversight on transit goods to prevent Ghana from being used as a conduit for illicit pharmaceutical trade.
Per our rules and regulations, per our laws, there are only two areas, designated areas, for the import and export of medication or drugs, if you like. Tema Port and the Kotoka International Airport. Drugs are not imported through our land borders, and therefore I encourage all the stakeholders, all our security agencies to confiscate any drugs, even if it is paracetamol, and it's going through our land borders. And the president has also committed that he is going to provide all the logistics it takes for us to effectively fight the influx of opioids in this country. So the law is clear. We are not going to reinvent the wheel. In fact, we are also looking at tightening our regulation regarding transit goods, because usually they hide behind transit goods. This is believed to be going to Niger. And last night, I was in talks with the minister responsible for foreign affairs. We are contacting the Niger government to know whether or not they have okayed such a consignment.
Ghana's Health Minister Kwabena Minta Kando speaking there. You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal, and online at wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Amnesty International reveals a worrying trend of human rights violations and intimidation of CSOs and journalists in Niger. Burkina Faso declares intention to withdraw from the Organization of La Francophonie, OIF. Côte d'Ivoire's electoral umpire urges solidarity as it displays provisional electoral list nationwide. The Ghanaian government considers the enforcement of regulations around transit of goods following Monday's opiate seizure. Ahead in the news, we have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Thank you for staying with us. Let's take you to Nigeria, where the Al-Mishkin IDP camp in Borno State in the northeast is meant to be a place of refuge for those displaced by the Boko Haram insurgency, but for many women and girls living there, it has become a place of fear and silence. While officials claim the camp is safe, victims and their families tell a different story, one of suffering, exploitation, and neglect. WAD's Usman Umar visited the camp and filed this report.
For over a decade, thousands of displaced persons have called Al-Miskin IDP camp home. It is a place of refuge, but also a place of suffering. Among the most vulnerable are women and girls, many of whom are at risk of sexual violence. Yet, when asked about reports of molestation and rape in the camp head, Bulama Burum, is categorical in his denial.
No. Inside this camp, nothing like that. There's no report like that. In fact, it's been more than 3 years now that we have even put some youth to be monitoring reports like that, and we haven't had anything, because as the leaders of this camp, we can never allow such a thing to happen in this camp. And up to now, we haven't had any of the reports, except maybe when they go out of the camp, but not inside this camp. Nobody can do that while we are here. It doesn't happen inside this camp.
But for Aisha Usman, the camp's woman leader, this statement is far from the truth. Holding back tears, she narrates her own daughter's ordeal.
The Bulama, the village leader, earlier claimed there is no molestation of women in this camp. But I can tell you categorically that this is a lie. Just because it hasn't happened to him or his family doesn't mean it's not happening. It's happening. Girls are being molested and raped here. In fact, my 16-year-old daughter was raped in this camp and became pregnant. If you see her now, you wouldn't believe she's the one carrying a child because she was so young when it happened. This happened here. And it's not just my daughter. Other girls in this camp are going through the same thing. For him to say it doesn't happen here is completely false.
Humanitarian organizations have long warned about the risks faced by displaced women, particularly in camps where resources are scarce. With many forced to beg or rely on strangers for survival, the vulnerability is heightened. For now, the truth about sexual violence in Al-Miskin IDP camp in Borno State remains trapped between official denial and the painful testimonies of victims. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Maiduguri, capital of Borno State, northeastern Nigeria.
Well, while Usman Umar stand by to join us in the guest interview, let's take you to Sierra Leone, where a report has emerged that the government is struggling to collect revenues because many informal workers and traders evade taxes. The report added that the informal sector, a crucial engine of the country's economy, is under increasing scrutiny for its lack of contribution to government revenue. While experts strategize on how to fully incorporate the informal sector into the tax net, there have also been concerns about ensuring that these moves do not stifle its role in employment creation and economic development.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is The Guest.
Well, as promised, we'll now take you back to Nigeria, precisely Maiduguri, the Borno State capital, where there have been allegations of sexual abuse of women and young girls in the Al-Mishkin IDP camp. The camp is meant to be a place of refuge for those displaced by the Boko Haram insurgency, but for many women and girls living there, it has become a place of fear. Usman Umar, who is currently in the state, has been speaking with these women who they say are being threatened if they voiced out.
The camp itself, which is an IDP camp named Al-Miskin, has been in existence for over 11 years, according to camp officials' records. And recall the recent flooding that happened in Maiduguri also displaced the occupants of the camp for some time. And of course, a lot of them, according to the camp officials, had to sleep on the streets and wherever else they could find shelter. And so this made their already deplorable situation even more vulnerable. And particularly, as you would expect, women and young girls were at the receiving end of all of these difficulties. Now, the camp itself, as we speak, is undergoing a very, very serious situation of hunger, a very, very serious situation of lack of access to basic amenities that will make life even a little bit easier. They complain of hunger, they complain of lack of care from either government or even the usual non-governmental organizations that used to come around. Yeah. Recall also that USAID has been essentially part of those organizations that have been providing support for such places. Now, with the cutting of funding of USAID, they are also feeling the brunt. So the entire situation is exacerbated. Now, of course, when situations like this happen, vulnerabilities are exposed.
Let me just quickly chip in here because of our time. Were you able to speak with any of the officials to know what the government is actually doing to ameliorate the sufferings of those people in the IDP camp?
Yes, I will say yes, because not on this visit, but on my previous visit that I had the opportunity of speaking with the Deputy Governor of Borno State in the person of Dr. Usman Kadafur. He confirmed to me that efforts are on by the state government to ensure that all IDP camps within the state are closed and people are returned back to their homes. But of course, it's a gradual process. So I want to believe that the Al-Miskin camp is one of the last, the Al-Miskin camp and another one called Mura camp. They are the only two existing camps right now in Borno State, and efforts, they are unofficial at the moment, meaning that the government is not directly responsible for their upkeep. So you can now see the disconnect. The government says that they have already made all efforts to ensure that majority of the people that have been displaced have been returned and resettled into their community. So this Al-Miskin camp is one of the unofficial, quote-unquote, camps that are left. In
30 seconds, what is the state of security there in Maiduguri where you are?
Well, calm has largely returned to the city, especially the metropole. But of course, you still have pockets of the usual crime here and there. But largely, the city of Maiduguri is bouncing back to life. And that is also a sign that gradually the people are gaining back their life. But of course, this does not mean that it is yet uhuru for everybody, particularly those who are still residents in the two unofficial IDP camps. They are still vulnerable. They are still crying out for help.
WAD's Usman Umar speaking to my colleague Imoradet about the plight of women and young girls in the Al-Mishkin IDP camp in Borno State, Nigeria. Up next is sports news with Sankule Janko.
Hello out there, and thank you for joining us. Nigeria sealed their qualification into the third round of the 2025 FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup with a 2-0 victory over South Africa, bringing the aggregate score to 5-1. With the victory, the Flamingos continue their quest to qualify for the finals of the 2025 FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup. Meanwhile, Guinea advanced to the next round after defeating Sierra Leone 2-1 in the second leg of the second round. With an aggregate score of 4-3, the Guineans qualified for the final stage of the qualifiers. And in the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers, Senegal will take on Sudan for a crucial showdown in the battle for top spot on Friday evening. The Teranga Lions are unbeaten but trail Sudan by 2 points. Their head-to-head clash could decide the group's outcome. The Super Eagles of Nigeria must win at Rwanda to revive their hopes before home clash against Zimbabwe. With 3 teams, Rwanda, South Africa and Benin all tied on 7 points, Nigeria are in serious danger of missing out on qualification, sitting 5th with 3 points after 4 matches. And reigning African champions Cote d'Ivoire have maintained their dominance in World Cup qualification, sitting top of Group F with 10 points, 1 ahead of Gabon. The Ivorians will hope to extend their lead when they take on Burundi on Friday evening. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal, and online at wadr.org. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Maujo Juve, Mam Kodu Injaifai, and Umu Daniego for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms X, Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via hot